the Political Free Agents podcast, and we're back. We're ready to discuss the train wreck that was the presidential debate. Or debate.
Not much of a debate.
I mean, like, train wreck is about as accurate as this thing gets, bro. Like,
or shit show. Either one will work.
Dana Bash said that immediately after it was over, and I was like, "Oh, they just let loose on CNN. All right, I see you." But it's accurate, right? Like, it's completely accurate to what was happening last night. I honestly can't believe that was what was going on. That's what ended up happening. But it wasn't far from what we predicted on Sunday. We both kind of expected certain things, and that's pretty much what had happened. So anyway, before we dive in, how you doing, my man? How's your Wednesday going?
It's going, brother. You know, another beautiful day in Texas. Can't complain. I'm blessed for sure.
Absolutely, man. It's been a lighter day for me. I've been working so many hard days lately, like just crazy long hours. But today was a little bit more of like the planning side of everything. So it's a little lighter day on that front. But all right. So GOAT James is in the finals. Let's just get that out the way for the viewers. Let's get that out the way. GOAT James in the finals versus the Miami Heat. Let's just go ahead and say he get this chip. We can go and put him at the peak of Mount Rushmore.
What? Come on now. Oh my God! Just stop it. Stop it. My God! Just stop.
You know the debate's gonna come right
Stop.
now.
Oh my God!
If he loses, they're gonna try to erase him from Mount Rushmore, right?
If he loses, there's no more discussion ever again. If he wins, I'm gonna have to stomach. I don't know how many more years of Nick Wright trying to talk about how LeBron James is the best player that's ever lived. It's gonna be excruciatingly painful.
Yeah, no, without a shadow of a doubt, man. It's coming. It's coming. But if he doesn't win this one, he definitely, like, that's a legacy blow. Like, without a shadow of a doubt, that he should win this one, hands down. If not a sweep, within 4-2, something like that, it should be. But we'll see. Anyway, on to the debates. So last night we had Biden, Trump, and Chris Wallace was the, if you want to call it that, a moderator. Let's just start. I want to start with Chris, though, because Chris didn't have an easy job at all. Being in between that sort of thing, I don't think there was a way, and I heard Jason say this earlier. I was telling a friend last night on Facebook as well. There was no way that he came out of this thing looking good. Like, there's absolutely no way. So if he presses Trump too much, or if he corrects Trump on anything, they're going to use the, victim thing of, I had to debate two people, which they're using. If he didn't press Biden enough, that same narrative would be there. And if he did press Biden enough, it would have been, look at Fox News trying to prop up Trump, right? So he was in a lose-lose regardless of his position. But in terms of like performance, I think CNN says something about an hour and 13 minutes in is when he first corrected Trump. And I don't think that was accurate. I think he early on tried to get Trump to not interrupt as much. But it didn't work. Like, once Trump got to rolling downhill, there was no stopping him from being aggressive in that way. And I thought he would temper it, but he didn't. And Chris he couldn't manage it, like, just to be honest. But I don't know if anybody could manage it, right? Like, I'm not sure he could have stopped it.
I mean, the only way essentially somebody would have had to have talked to Trump like he was a child in order to get him to stop interrupting Joe Biden. I mean, he would have had to scold him or make him kind of look bad in order to get Trump to stop from interrupting him. But
right.
To be honest with you, I watched enough presidential debates to know that like candidates interrupting each other is pretty common, but Trump was just relentless. I mean, Trump would not let Biden get an edge word in. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't until about an hour in that I think Trump started heeding Wallace's, pleas to stop so that Biden can get his word in. But you're right that interruptions are relatively common, as well as the, stopping the moderator and saying, no, I get to respond like that. That stuff is normal. We see that all the time. So from a strategy perspective, Mike, I'll let you take this one first. From a strategy perspective, one, do you think Trump executed his strategy, like his team strategy, or do you think he executed his? And how effective do you think he was? And the same thing for Biden's strategy. What are your thoughts?
I think they both failed pretty miserably. I think from Trump's perspective, his strategy should have been, I don't know if it was, but I assume this strategy was to let Joe Biden kind of hang himself. But he didn't give Joe the opportunity to do that. So,
right.
I mean, he kind of let Joe Biden off the hook by not allowing him to answer certain questions and then press him in a way where it didn't seem like all he was doing was bogarting the conversation, right? I mean, he could have, like, the difference between the way he debated Joe Biden, the way he debated Hillary Clinton are just completely different. He had a lot of good comebacks and responses to Hillary Clinton that kind of exposed her weaknesses, on stage. But he didn't let Joe Biden. He didn't let Joe Biden step on any landmines. I mean, he kept throwing them out there, but it was all he was doing was interrupting him while he was doing it. So it was like they were just arguing the whole time, and nobody could really formulate, a sentence or, a coherent strain of thought, and then have somebody else kind of rebut with some, because there was plenty of stuff that Trump could have elaborated on and gone into detail on when it comes to Biden's record, but he just wouldn't stop talking. And then Biden got so flustered and just came off so weak that I don't think he's winning anybody over from his performance. So I mean, it just looked like he was getting bullied the whole time, and he just couldn't find a way. He couldn't find a way to stop Trump from doing what he was doing, and he couldn't come back at Trump in any kind of meaningful way that was like, aha, gotcha. So Biden just didn't. He didn't put his foot in his own mouth like he normally does when he's talking, but at the same time he definitely didn't do anything to garner any kind of like support from maybe undecided voters or people who are on the fence or anything. I mean, I think in general, like the general consensus from what I can see is from people that I know and the people that I've been listening to in, alternative media, is that it's just a complete and utter shit show. And pretty much nobody really knows who won, but all we know is that America lost last night, and that Putin is probably laughing his ass off.
So, no, that's absolutely a fact. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you saw there are already Putin popping popcorn in his mouth memes all over the internet today. I mean, it's such a tragedy, and we said this on the last podcast. It was going to be a shit show, right? Because this was. But here's the other thing. Like me and the wifey, we were watching the debate last night and we were cracking up. I mean, it was entertainment television. Like there was nothing that Trump acted and did exactly what I thought he would do. Right. So it's not like it was any surprise that Trump would act like this or conduct a debate in the way that he did, with bullying tactics and talking over somebody and bringing up, certain things about Joe Biden and his record and his past. I mean, honestly, the one thing that he kept saying that I think he really didn't do a good enough job on elaborating was, he said, it was either 30, I don't know if it's 37 or 47 years, but he's like, you spent 47 years in Congress and look what you've accomplished. And there's a lot of truth to that, because this country's been falling apart for the better part of 40 years. Biden's been there the whole time. And so, and that was kind of Trump's, that was kind of the appeal for a lot of people for Trump, for voting for Trump the first time, is that he wasn't part of the quote unquote swamp that Biden has been a part of for, 40 plus years. But at the same time, you could argue that Trump put just as many swamp creatures into his administration as Obama did or Bush did. So, over the last 3 or 4 years. So it doesn't, I don't know if it's a fair argument to make, but I don't think he did enough to really outline all of the things that Biden has been a part of over the last 47 years, like NAFTA and, the crime bill, and, socializing, healthcare with Obamacare, the mandate that you, like he's talking about bringing back the Obamacare mandate where everybody's forced to purchase it. Like, I'm telling you right now, the fact that Trump got rid of that that's a huge deal for somebody like me. Now, that doesn't mean that I support Trump, but the fact that somebody could force me to, the fact that somebody could force me to buy something, is like, it's so antithetical. Right. Or pay a penalty, which is like so antithetical to, what it means to be an American, that to argue to bring that thing back is, that in and of itself shows you what somebody's state of mind is. So I don't know. I mean, there were a bunch of things that Trump just didn't. He focused so much on interrupting Joe and trying to get him flustered that I think he lost sight of the goal, which was to let him basically hang himself in a lot of ways. But so Trump definitely screwed the pooch there, for sure.
Yeah. So I didn't catch about him saying that he wanted to bring back the individual mandate part. Maybe that's a part of his platform. There hasn't really been a need for me to dig into Biden policies or even Trump's, just because they're two terrible options. But in terms of the rest, I largely agree, but we come to a different conclusion. And I think in that sense, Trump, I think, failed terribly at, like you say, leaving Biden out there to hang himself, which was what we said he needed to do. Like he needed Biden to look bad in a way on like policies, but he couldn't do that because, and this is where and mind you, I don't think all the voters have this information or they are aware of these talking points or things. But I'm thinking of this from the vein of all of the talking points Trump came in saying about Biden and like all the fear mongering about Biden. So radical left doesn't like law and order, backs the riots sort of thing, coming after your suburbs, like socialist agendas like the Green New Deal and like all these things that he tried to fearmonger and say, you don't want Biden in because these are the policies that you're going to get. But when he comes in and presses Biden on him, Biden's like, no, I don't, the Green New Deal is not my plan. I do support law and order. I support the cops. There's only a few bad apples, had that whole line in that segment. Talked about the suburbs, which I saw people were talking about earlier. I think it may have been on Stapleton's podcast where they were talking about it. But he wasn't saying, I think Biden messed up by not clarifying the point, but Trump had been hitting Biden about the suburbs, saying that all of this crime and stuff is going to happen because low-income housing is coming to the suburbs because Biden wants to, Trump got rid of a Biden-Obama era, I forget what it was called, but anyway, there was something with the Biden-Obama era that helped with low-income housing in suburbs. Trump got rid of that. Well, who is largely in low-income housing? Well, people with low incomes, right? Who is the low-income bottom of America? Black people, right? So people were taking it as Biden bringing up the diversity of suburbs right now as him saying, oh, the bad people are already there. But that wasn't it because of the backstory. But I could see how people, if they weren't connecting those dots, would feel that way. But I think Trump didn't let, I think you aptly put it right. He didn't let Biden hang himself. And that's what gave Trump, the L. Mind you, I agree.
Here's what Trump also didn't. He did a mediocre job at, because what he was trying to do in a way is he was trying to create a wedge between Biden and the radical left. So Biden needs the Bernie Sanders progressives, and he probably needs what is considered the radical left to vote for him, right? So I don't think he really cares about those people. He doesn't care about the progressives, doesn't care about the radical left, but he needs their vote, right? And so what Trump was trying to do, he was trying to divide Biden and the radical left. Like, so as many people that are out there talking about how Trump didn't disavow white supremacists and hate groups, Biden didn't disavow the radical left that's out there rioting and burning places and acting violently, and that's why Trump was bringing up, law and order, is because he wanted to press him on that, because by forcing Biden to admit that he supports law and order, it disenfranchises the radical left faction of the Democratic Party, or the left that's out there, causing all these problems when it comes to all these violent riots and protests around the country. So he's trying to build that wedge there. He did a mediocre job at doing it. So I definitely think he could have done a better job, because he knows that. And so I guess what I'm saying is it's a double standard for people to say that Trump didn't disavow these white supremacist groups, these hate groups, which he did, and he's done it multiple times in the past. And like my take is when I was listening to Chris Wallace ask him that, Trump was basically was making it sound like really, I mean, I've done this so many times before. Like, okay, he's like, and at one point he was like, tell me who you want me to disavow. He's like, give me a name, and I'll do it. And then he like threw out Proud Boys.
No, he said, what do you want me to call them? Not who. He said, what do you want me to call them?
Well, and that was after he said, give me a name. He said, who do you want me to disavow? He said, give me a name. What do you want me to call him? Like that's what he said first. So he kept getting asked it, and he's like, who do you want me to name? Because he's already disavowed white supremacists and KKK like in the past multiple times. So, but he could very easily, see, this is Trump's problem, is he could have very easily just done it again and had been done with it and had moved on, but he didn't, right? So it took Chris Wallace pressing him multiple times and then him finally getting frustrated and be like, okay, fine, just, tell me who you want me to do to disavow, So, I guess in his mind, it's probably a joke that he has to do it still. But at the same time, like I was saying, I think it's hypocritical because Joe Biden, when asked multiple times by Trump, basically refused to disavow Antifa, Black Lives Matter when it comes to violent protesting and riots and that faction of the left. So,
but that's not actually it. Like Biden has every month, I think, except for July, since all of them started, he has been asked about this, and he has been unequivocally against the violence. Like he's said it every single month. And I'm not joking. Every single month, because came up in a debate I was having, and every month he stated that he does not support that. In the debate, he also stated that he does not support that.
Which is why it's hypocritical. It's hypocritical to so okay, I will, if you give Joe Biden that, then you can't on one hand expect Donald Trump to answer something like what everybody wanted him to answer as far as disavowing KKK or white supremacy when he's done it so many times in the past, and then also but then give Biden a pass for not answering that same kind of question because, well, he's answered it so many times in the past.
No, I'm not saying that. No, but that's not what I'm saying.
That's the point. That's the point I was making.
Right. But he answered it last night.
Not really. He got the only time he answered it was when he was pressed on it so many times by Trump. So like he just kept pounding him, like, do you support law and order, blah blah blah, and like eventually, like finally, he just gave in. Was like, he's like, yes, I support law and order.
Right, but
like he didn't answer right off the bat.
Right. So here's all right. So I'm gonna jump back. I'm gonna come back to this point because I have the transcript here specifically to the white supremacy point, and I'll also explain why this part is so important, because all of the disavowing that Trump has supposedly done in the past has all come because of situations exactly like this, where Trump has to be pressed. Like none of the times that he's disavowed them has he done it like initially, like, hey, what do you think about this sort of thing? Every single one of them, they've had to press them. After Charlottesville, it took 3 days before he actually said that he disavows those movements, right? And that's when you get the whole, good people on both sides sort of thing. That was 3 days later. That was after multiple statements he's made where he would not disavow them, right? So when you come into tonight and it's a very straightforward, simple question, this is his response. They said, let me see. He said, I'm willing to do anything. So he asked if he was willing to disavow. He said, are you prepared specifically to do that? And he said, I will say almost anything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing. Basically, he's trying to say it's all left wing, which it isn't. And then he said,
well, most of it is. Most of it, for sure.
Yeah. So
I'm not going to say all of it. But.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I wouldn't say necessarily most of it either, because I don't think Antifa's left wing. even though it may.
What?
I don't think Antifa's left. Like, I don't think they would align with Democrats is basically what I mean in that sense. But we can dig into that. And so Trump said, I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace, right? Good line, right? Chris Wallace said, well, do it, sir. And then Biden jumps in and says, say it, do it, say it. his language just cracks me up. And so then Trump's response is, what do you want to call them? Give me a name. Go ahead. Who do you want me to condemn? And Chris told him white supremacists,
exactly,
right-wing militia, right? And so Trump says, Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what, somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because that is not a right-wing problem. That is a left wing. Now they go on.
Yeah. So what Trump is trying to say there is that, and I don't know enough about Proud Boys. I've seen a couple Proud Boys videos, and the ones that I've seen, the guys look like veterans, and I've seen Proud Boy videos that have people in them who are not white. So yeah, I can't say that this is a white supremacist group when I've seen videos where people who appear to be members of the organization aren't even white. So, but I think what he's saying is that if the radical left if they're at the point where they're rioting, burning places down, looting, essentially destroying cities, and people who decide that they're not going to take that anymore and they're not going to put up with that anymore, if those people are considered far right for whatever reason, because they're willing to stand up against that kind of violence and use violence to stand up against that kind of violence, I think that's kind of what he's trying to say is that, stand down at, right now, but stand by, because it doesn't mean, I tell you right now, like, the president, first of all, I don't think the president controls those organizations in the first place. So whether he tells them to do something doesn't mean that they're actually going to do it or not. And second,
they sure are happy about it.
Well, yeah, but secondly, what are those organizations supposed to do if they just stop protecting what they think they need to be protecting and just allow radical groups like Antifa or Black Lives Matter to continue to do what they've been doing when it comes to destroying cities and burning them down in communities? So are they supposed to just our right-wing, our quote-unquote right-wing organizations just supposed to sit back and let the radical left continue to burn this place down? I don't know. I would say no, and I don't think it's reasonable to expect that to.
The framing of that, though, is problematic, though. So on one hand, you're saying that the violence is Antifa and Black Lives Matter. And this is the problem that I have with Black Lives Matter actually being an organization, because anytime somebody goes to a rally or protest and a riot breaks out, and if somebody had a Black Lives Matter shirt, insignia, or whatever, it's now all of a sudden that's Black Lives Matter that's doing it, right? So there's
bro, how many videos have you seen lately where you've got a group of Black people and white people yelling Black Lives Matter, interrupting people while they're eating, getting in their face, acting like physical and violent, but they're saying Black Lives Matter, or that's, I'm not saying you don't have to be part of an actual organization. If you're out there doing things and conducting yourself in a way that's, aggressive and violent in the name of a certain ideology or movement, and that's what you actually believe, then you're like, any movement is only as good as the people who are leading it or or taking part in it. I mean,
right. And here's where the framing is that I'm saying though. So here's listen to me on this part though about the framing is that you're taking what being around there and the verbiage that they're saying is saying that is a BLM, specific thing, meaning, and I'll go with you, not necessarily the organization, but the movement, right? This debate topic came up and nobody said anything about Proud Boys. They said right-wing militia and they said white supremacists, right? And so whenever the protests that, and I've seen plenty of videos specifically of the Proud Boys being aggressive towards protesters who were not, whenever you start seeing that sort of stuff happening and you have that framing of Black Lives Matter on one side, and then you have the Proud Boys coming in, whether they're being the aggressor or the protesters that, are either Antifa or Black Lives Matter, whatever. Whenever you have that sort of scenario, it comes off as the white supremacist side that is fighting against the Black Lives Matter side, right? And so that framing is part of the problem, right? So you're lumping Antifa and BLM, but you're not lumping white supremacists and Proud Boys because you saw some Black people there, right? So whenever this comes up in the debate, and Trump is the one who calls out the Proud Boys. And I would say also from what I've seen, I'm not sure either that they're necessarily a racist organization or white supremacist organization. I know it definitely is heavily white. I have seen other quote unquote racists in the organization. But from what they describe themselves as, they are, I don't want to say necessarily just Christians, but they are a group of Christian people who are trying to right wrongs or something. But they have definitely had their hand in violence prior to all of these riots that have happened in the Portland area and otherwise. So they're definitely along the quote unquote right wing militia part, right? But in terms of this disavowing, like it's not even a point of, have you said it before? It's a simple answer, right? Like if they ask him again in the debate and it's his chance to clear the air on any of that, yeah, I disavow them. I think they're a terrible organization, blah, blah, blah. He could have said anything he wanted to say, but he needed to throw out red meat. And that's what boils down to every single time. And you can check the tape, go to every single time he has quote unquote disavowed white supremacists. And that's exactly what happens is he goes around, he skirts it. And he's done this before where he said, what do you want me to call them? And people will answer and he just goes with it. Okay.
Because he doesn't really know who they're talking about at any given moment.
You can't give them that out. If you say white supremacist, that is as clear as it gets. Do you disavow white supremacists?
Hold on a second. How do you know what group or what people somebody is considering white supremacists? As far as look, I can make you can probably make a solid argument that this group Proud Boys, and like I said, I don't know enough about them, but you could probably make a solid argument that these guys are probably nothing more than white Christians who perceive that this country is being destroyed from the inside by a radical movement on the left. To remove some very basic American ideas like the right to bear arms, free speech, because you can see plenty of videos out there of the far left essentially threatening people when it comes to their freedom of speech and encroaching in on their personal space, burning things down, blah, blah, blah. So you can make an argument that these people are just not the kind of people who are going to put up with that and let this country be destroyed from the inside. I bet a lot of them are veterans, too. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them are veterans.
You can make that argument all day, but nobody said anything about the Proud Boys, right? This conversation was not about Proud Boys. Nobody said it. Trump brought them into it. So the conversation has changed to whether or not the Proud Boys are a white supremacist group, but nobody said anything about them, right? So the conversation, it doesn't matter who you classify as white supremacists, because he didn't ask, what do you think of the Proud Boys? That's a completely different answer that can be nuanced, and you can adjust that. He asked about white supremacists, and it's very clear. White supremacists are people who believe white people are superior to all other races. They feel like there is a inherent ownership of America, that it is a white country and it needs to stay that way. That's white supremacy. Trump, do you disavow that? He has equivocated on every single time he's been asked that. Like, the tape is there. There's no way around it. He has done it. Now, when it becomes politically expedient, he does it. Like with Charlottesville, 3 days later, when they kept pressing and it became such a big deal, he said, yeah, sure, I disavow. I don't think that it should be the case, blah, blah, blah. Like, there's always something there. If you disavow, dude, you disavow. That's it. There's no need.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's such a joke to have to ask that of somebody. Like, I mean, because this is what happens every time. It's a joke when every time something happens to a person of color, and for whatever reason it was a white person that did it, and you have to be asked, do you disavow white supremacy? It's a joke to have to answer that. Like, it's insulting. It's like, I would find it very insulting if I was the president, if some random black person was killed by a random or a white person somewhere in the country, and it came across, and I as the president would have to have a conversation and disavow white supremacy as if that's even a freaking question that has to be answered. And then you get pressed on it so much, and then finally you're like, okay, fine. Yes, I disavow it.
But here's the thing, though. If you were president and that came up and that was asked of you, you would say, no, I don't support that. And it would be done. Nobody would have to come back to you and ask you that. See, that's the problem, is that this is not about.
No, John, I mean, if I was president, I would probably look at somebody and I would be like, that's a stupid question. And I'd move on to something more important.
Right. I mean,
it's a stupid question.
My point is that you would make it very clear, however you would respond, that there's no need to even ask that question, right? Like, that's dumb. There's no need, that's not who I am, sort of thing, right? It would be clear. What I'm saying is that Trump has left way too much wiggle room on this, and he's dog whistled way too much. And so when you do those things, you're going to keep getting these answers, or these questions, excuse me. You're going to keep getting them. Now, whenever they come up, wherever they come up, I will 100% agree. There are times that things happen that people point to white supremacy, and it's not white supremacy. It's overblown. It's definitely taken way out of context in a lot of cases, without a shadow of a doubt. But whenever you act the way he's acting, you do the things he's done, and you operate in those spaces in that way, it's going to come up. It's just going to continue to come up. Same thing as if Biden, with the whole BLM thing, it's going to keep coming up. If Biden wins and there's a riot or something, they're going to come to him and say, do you disavow riots? And he's going to have to answer that every single time.
But John, we have to remember that this is who Trump is. His personality type isn't one that brings people together or explains things in a way that you would expect from a normal person who's like trying to, mend things and heal things and figure problems out. That's not his personality type in the first place. It wasn't his personality type when he ran the first time. It's not going to be it's not his personality type as president. So it's not something that, I guess what I'm saying is that if anybody expects him as a standard to have that kind of response to that kind of question, they're barking up the wrong tree in the first place, because that's not his personality type.
Yeah, so it's not about personality.
So you can't.
Do you disavow white supremacy? No. I mean, yes, I disavow white supremacy. I don't need a dissertation on white supremacy. Like, it's a simple answer, just like with the rest of his answers. He was able to go into detail on the rest of his answers. Like, there's no way out for him here. Like, he blew that. That was completely blown. And I'm not going to give him an out.
Yeah, I'm not going to say he couldn't have done it. Yeah, I'm not saying that he crushed that answer at all. I'm just saying that, I'm not reading into it. all that much. You know what I mean? Like
So
he could have answered every question better last night. I mean, he didn't.
I think we can agree on this though. They definitely, and it's funny. I was rolling afterwards because I was watching CNN because I just love their take better, and so they always have like the approved, disapproved chart, right? And so I ended up keeping it on afterwards. I was about to cut it off and I was like, let me see what they say. And when Dana Bash came out with what she said, shoot, I can't remember his name, Jake Tapper, he started off by saying it was a hot mess in a garbage fire, a dumpster fire in the middle of a train wreck. I was like, hold on, this is going to be entertaining. But anyway, my point, Van Jones came on right after that. And what did I say on Sunday? Van Jones was going to be hyper focused on this is going to be like, he said something that was the absolute word, blah, blah. And it just went on. And he gave 3 points. He said basically all of them were about the white supremacy line. And he repeated it 3 times. And I completely 100% agree that they're overblowing this. 100% agree. They've
and you know what? And you know what's worse? Black people aren't buying that shit anymore. A lot of black people aren't buying that anymore. I'm not saying all black people aren't buying that. I'm just saying that there's a large contingency of black people around this country who just aren't buying that shit anymore, don't want to hear it, and are like, sing that song to somebody else because you guys have been singing this song for like 3+ decades and we're tired of hearing it. So, I don't think
it's all you heard last night. Like I spent some time like digging in and I wanted to kind of see what the pulse was right after. Right. So I kind of started checking my Facebook feed just to kind of see, because I have a general mix. I mean, being in Texas, a lot of conservatives, but then I also have a good number of liberal friends. And I was kind of wanting to see who was latching on to what. And I checked Twitter and I checked some stations out and things like that. And they were just all latched on the white supremacy part, right? And that was a small portion of a debate that was like just chock full of a bunch of mess to address, but that ended up standing out. And I think it was on purpose. I was kind of surprised that it was even brought up as a question as early as it was in the debate. I was a little bit surprised about that. I think the right question follow up from that, because Trump brought it up, Chris Wallace didn't, if I recall correctly, but Chris didn't then question Biden about support of Antifa or anything like that, right? Or let's say whatever the opposite of white supremacy and left-wing militia, basically. He didn't necessarily press him on that. And I think that would have been the relevant follow-up there. Wallace did ask him about the violence, though, but he didn't ask him about that specifically. But so going into it even more, one thing that I kept, I kept chronicling this on our private chat because I wanted to make sure I remembered these parts. Trump definitely had a lot of good zingers, right? Like he definitely kind of came back. And one of the funniest one, I don't know if you caught this, but one of the funniest ones was Biden said number one, and he spoke about number one. And then he said, number two, number three. And Trump jumped in and was like, you were on number two. And he just kept going. And I was like, okay, like that is what Trump needed to do, was show that Biden was aloof, right? Like he didn't have all his faculties. And I think that's largely what he failed at. And because all of he doesn't work past 9 a.m. He's locked in the basement. They won't let him speak. Like all of those things were on Front Street. And for an hour and a half, he wasn't aloof. Not that he had a whole bunch of energy, but he wasn't aloof. He was able to get his point across when they weren't back and forth and all that stuff. And then he wasn't aloof. He wasn't stuck in the basement where they couldn't speak, because he did, quote unquote, know what he was talking about. And then Biden turned it to the American people over and over. Now, I heard Jason saying that, the look away part, and I did catch that. I remember pointing that out in our chat that Biden kept looking forward, and it kind of was a little odd. But when it came to strategy, I think Biden followed strategy more because you could tell he was kind of trained up. Biden had some zinger about the Woodward stuff, where Trump basically said he didn't want to cause a panic, and Biden looked at the camera and said, "You don't panic, he panics." I thought that was a good one. And then he told Trump he needs to get out of the bunker and out of the sand trap. That one was kind of funny. But you could tell that like Biden's not a funny guy. Like Biden basically was operating from a playbook, and he was executing that playbook. And you could kind of tell from those points. And they always have these like little zinger lines. Trump's zingers seem to be more off the cuff, right? He just like riffed off the situation, like the 1-3, and Trump's like, "No, you're on 2," right? I think Trump did a good job on. There was a part in there where they were talking about COVID towards the beginning, and Trump brought out all of the pharmaceutical companies relevant to the vaccine, and I thought that was good, along the lines of dispelling the idea that Trump doesn't support science. And I really thought Trump failed to actually hammer that home more, because that's a big narrative against that's a narrative that the left lodges against the right as a whole, that they don't support science. And then Trump is saying, no, we're backing these, experts in the field. I think Trump should have kind of driven that home a little bit more, even though later on he did bring back up, and he kind of pressed Biden about not believing the experts. So he kind of flipped it on him, right? Like, oh, so you don't believe these experts in the field of science, sort of thing.
I think Trump did exactly what he wanted to do, and that was not debate.
I think yeah.
So,
yeah. Okay.
Because Trump can't debate because he doesn't actually know enough about these issues to have an actual debate about the issues. So if you know that, then your strategy has to be, don't let the debate actually take place. And so in order to do that, Trump did exactly what he needed to do, and that was get in Joe's head, fluster him, interrupt him so much to get him off track that you couldn't even have a conversation about any of these actual topics. And then anytime the conversation halfway got reined back in, there really wasn't enough time to really get into any of the meat of what the questions were about. So I think Trump probably executed his plan, exactly the way he wanted to. But from our perspective, this is the problem, is from our perspective, we're thinking like, oh, he could have done like X, could have done Y way better, right, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, but in his mind, he was probably like, yeah, did exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't really talk about shit. I spent an hour and a half, interrupting Joe Biden. Didn't even have him talk about shit. I mean.
Yeah, and this is what I said. Remember on Sunday, I said Biden has to get Trump to talk policy for that specific point. And I don't think Biden would press him enough about policy. And I think Trump, like, he really could have pressed on policy, right? Because Biden, some of these things, I just figured Trump is about to nail him on this thing, right? So Biden said his plan for manufacturing was basically buy American, right? What is that in other words? America first, which is Trump's plan, right? Like, I just knew Trump was going to like nail him. Like, Trump is good at a backyard brawl kind of debate, in that sense, where it's like zinger coming back and gotcha sort of things, right? I just knew he was going to tell him like something like, oh, so you want to do my plan? Okay, so you're just copying me, sort of thing, right? Like, I just knew he was going to catch, but he didn't. He didn't go there. And Biden said that he wanted to raise corporate taxes to 28%. Like, dude, hammer that. No, who likes taxes? Who likes taxes? Like, I mean,
now,
I was sitting there like,
now here's, oh man, trust me. Oh my God. Trump could have gotten so many people's blood boiling last night if he would have talked about Joe's 28% tax plan.
Dude,
I mean,
hammer that.
But here's the thing. In the next debate, I think Trump, if Trump prepares for the next debate, to do in a way to do like exactly what we're talking about now, which is to bring the meat and potatoes when it comes to these actual issues, then I think he could really run away with it. I think this first one where he got under Joe's skin and got him all flustered, kind of showed how weak Joe was when it came to like dealing with Trump and his personality and his debate style and kind of bullying him. I don't think Trump is going to do that next debate to the extent that he did at this first one. I think he'll actually come at him more with some more substance, like on the issues that we're talking about. Especially, it would be the smart thing to do strategically for Trump. I actually think he got away with doing it the way that he did it this first time, because to be quite honest with you, everybody kind of expected that, or it wasn't a surprise for Trump to act like that. So, Trump can get away with it.
I think how far he went, it wasn't a surprise. That was a surprise. But the fact that he did it, I think people were expecting that to some extent. But I've kind of checked and saw like left and right both. They were both sides like, that was cringy.
What the hell just happened?
Yeah, that was terrible, And so, Of course, the campaigns are going to come out and say we won, sort of thing, is what it is. But my general take on win-loss is that the only way Biden really won this is because Trump messed it off. Like, I think Trump could have walked away with this, right? Like, Biden was trained up. He had some zingers that he was ready for. But if Trump would have just pressed him on just a few of the policies, he really could have just walked away with this. And I think if he comes back to the meat and, like you say, meat and potatoes in this next one, I think it'll be way too easy for him to force, because so as you say, Trump doesn't know all the details of these sort of things. I don't think Biden can expound upon his full entire plan beyond like the talking points aspect. It's hard, I think, for anybody to remember all of that stuff. I think Obama was good at that stuff because like he's trained up from that orator standpoint. But I don't think it's easy to remember all of that stuff. There are certain people I think could. I think Ted Cruz probably could as well, just because the lawyer background, like your mind has to retain so much. I think they could, but I don't think either one of them really have their policies on lock, right? Like not details. So I think both of them missed so many opportunities, to call them out, right? And I think Trump tried to call Biden out on a few things, and that separation from the far left, Biden has been so far left. I don't think that was a surprise unless somebody hasn't been paying attention. Biden has not been part of the far left. Like I talked to several people that you would consider like far left, and they have not liked Biden for a while because he's too centrist. Like they call him basically, what do they call it? A Republican or something like that. Like it's no secret that Biden is not left wing in that sense. Like they consider him.
Wall Street is out there. There's a lot of people on Wall Street right now who are saying, if Biden gets elected, it's no thing, because they don't think anything. They don't think anything's fundamentally going to change if Biden gets elected, which means that all the progressives out there that are itching for fundamental change are going to get hung out to dry if they end up voting for for Biden. I think Trump tried kind of like half-assedly to make the connection between Biden and, the progressive, radical or, quote unquote radical left, but he didn't do like you said. I mean, all he really, there were a couple things all he had to do was really talk about, to make that connection. Raising taxes to 28%. He could have hit that 28% tax rate increase, like he just did knock that out of the park and been like, you're no different than Bernie Sanders, wanting to raise people's taxes. Like how much should the government stick their hand in somebody's pocket? You want to raise it from 22 to 28%? That's a 6%,
right.
It's a 6% hike.
And with all of the conversation about economic recovery and all of that, he could have simply said, how fast do you think people recover from this if you start now taking 6 extra percent from these businesses, right? Like there's like an easy, out on that point. And I wish he would have pressed them on some of these policy topics some more, but I think it's too much narrative based. Like Trump has spent the last, how long ago did Biden win? 6 months ago, I guess, 7 months, whenever he became the candidate, or basically Bernie was out, essentially. He spent that whole time trying to make Biden equivalent to the far left, and everything that he threw at Biden's like, no, I don't support defunding the police, right? Like that's left. Biden's not there. And something is interesting that I didn't know. He said Trump planned on cutting like 400 million in police funding. But I hadn't seen that. I don't know. Trump said it wasn't true, but I mean, I don't know. I hadn't seen that.
Well, it was smart for Trump to do that because like I said, he wants to drive that wedge between that portion of the left and Joe Biden, just enough to get them to not vote. That's all it's really about, is driving a big enough wedge to where those people who know that Biden isn't really for them, but hate Trump enough to vote for Biden, just drive that wedge enough to where they don't vote for Biden. They're just like,
yeah. So I'll give you that. And I've been thinking about it in the vein of those that I talk to and that I see, and a lot of them are politically aware, right? So a lot of them do kind of see that, Biden is not left wing like that. So they see through that talking point. But it is fair to say that those who had not and thought that he was, with them after the, last night, I couldn't see why some of them be like, oh, you don't want to defund the police? That's all I'm about, right? And so I can see that part from there. I think Biden did a much better job with imagery, and I'm looking at it like a lot of these things are like on the face, like surface type stuff that people look for, like imagery and talking to the camera, and like these are all these sort of debate things that people press and say that you need to do, sort of thing. And so I thought he did good with imagery about, at one point he said, we become weaker, sicker, poorer, and more divided under Trump. And he also, with COVID, he said, how many of you woke up today with an empty chair at the table, right? Obviously, Biden followed, his training on that front. Like you can just see that stuff being cooked up, right? Like that's definitely, some debate training that they've done on that case. So
yeah, those are old school tactics.
Yeah, all old school tactics, and that's why I just kept picking up on. That's a lot of old school tactics. And Stapleton was laughing at the part about Hunter when he called him a crackhead. But he was addicted to cocaine and all of that. Yeah. I actually thought Biden did a good redirect on that whenever he said, a lot of people have had that problem. But I think what Biden failed to do is actually clarify why what Trump was saying wasn't correct. He kept saying, no, that's not true. That didn't happen. That's not true. That's not. And I think Biden.
I tell you what, though, most recovering cokeheads or crackheads or whatever you want to call it don't get hundreds of thousands of dollars a month jobs whenever after their recovery for doing something they have no experience doing.
So, I mean, he's a lawyer being paid to be a lawyer. So I mean, that line of him not having experience. I mean, you know, you don't have to have
in an industry that he had no in an industry where he had no experience, though. I mean, you can't. That's like saying a defense attorney for a murder defense attorney gets a $200,000 a month job for being a divorce attorney. When they've never handled a single divorce in their entire life. Just right. Because you're an attorney doesn't mean that you know what the hell you're doing when it comes to, there's so many different facets of being an attorney. Doesn't mean you can do the job.
Absolutely agree. But it also doesn't mean that you're not qualified, right? Like you may not have energy experience, but if you're used to corporate law, then corporate law is corporate law. You can address those things. And he was just on the board. I don't think he wasn't acting as a lawyer. I don't think, but I think Trump should have actually, I guess Trump did right by not going into too much detail. He's very good at throwing red meat out. And I think he did right by throwing out red meat and letting it kind of just simmer out there. And I don't think Biden addressed it. He said it's not true. That's not what happened. I think he did good by pointing out that people in the Trump admin have stated that didn't happen, sort of thing. But I think he should have just not hung his head and just kept saying that's not true. I think he should have. You know
where I laughed? I laughed when what was it? Trump said something about, or Joe said something about his son Beau, and Beau had served in Iraq. And, he accused Trump of saying something about the military or something. And then Trump comes back at him and is like, you said like something like, you just called a bunch of people like a bunch of dumb bastards or something like that. And he's
Biden said I didn't say
Trump's
that.
Basically like, yeah, Biden said he didn't say that. And he goes, and Trump's like, play the video. And then Biden's like, play the video. And I was like, somebody play the video right now. Somebody play that video right now. Chris, where are you at? Play that video right now. Roll it.
Roll it. Let's see.
You can clearly see Joe Biden calling those people, but what do you say?
Oh my God, when he said that,
ignorant bastards or something like that.
Hey, I'm not gonna lie. Hey, when he said it, I was like, wait, was that a deep fake? Like, what do you mean you didn't say it? Like, I just saw
that was one of those off the cuff Joe moments.
Yeah, I was like, what are you talking about? Oh, another
clap, you ignorant bastards.
Yeah.
Clap.
Yeah, we talked about that on Sunday, I think it was. And so another one that he stated was that he said the Green New Deal is not my plan. And I thought it was good of him to redirect and say, that's not my plan. I have the Biden plan. And I was like, okay, all right, good job on disconnecting yourself there. But now I'm not going to pull it up because I'm not going to share and all that right now. But joebiden.com/climate-plan. Second main point down, it says, Biden believes the Green New Deal is a crucial framework for meeting the climate challenges we face. It's the only reference on the page of Green New Deal, but right there, it says that he believes it is a crucial framework for addressing the climate challenges. And I was just like, okay, so that one didn't hit right, Biden, once I looked into it. And another one was whenever Kamala said about muzzling. I forget what she said, but something about, I think the Supreme Court, Kamala said, we will be muzzled, we will be suppressed, is what Chris Wallace asked Joe Biden about. And, Biden basically whiffed on that like big time and basically stated that healthcare experts, quote, said we will be muzzled, we will be suppressed. And he said that's what Trump is trying to do. And he tried to like redirect and point it to Trump. But he also tried to say that she didn't say it. And, Chris basically told her, no, like you said, you could say it. That she actually did say it. That's what she said, And so I thought that was good on Chris for actually calling him out on that. This is what I'm saying. Like he had to make Biden look aloof, and he would have just given him some rope. There were moments like that people probably don't even remember that happened.
Oh no. Yeah. I don't think anybody really remembers too much. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so like even this morning when I woke up or actually a little while after, I was thinking about the show and like, well, let me mentally kind of start getting ready for the show tonight. And I was like, man, what exactly did happen besides the train wreck? Like what actually went on?
God, I was laughing. It was so entertaining. It was, it's depressing at the same time because you're sitting there thinking like, I even looked at my wife and I was like, this is the country we live in right now.
This is it.
Literally, I was like, this is the country we live in. I was like, and now you understand why I'm so worried and why I'm telling people to buy gold, silver, and Bitcoin on a constant basis. Right. Because this is the state of American politics right now. So, but you gotta find humor in it because otherwise you're like want to blow your brains out. You know what I mean?
Completely depressing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, man, I went around and kind of took the pulse of quite a few people across the spectrum. And I mean, most of the people all felt like as a whole, it was horrible. Not Trump was absolutely ridiculous and Biden wiped the floor with him. It was these are our two options. Like this is all we have.
Exactly.
Right. And I think that the problem here is, so I actually did, I pulled it up. I checked the polling before, we came on, and I always go to 538 because they give all their details and all the specifics. And, they are definitely a little more solid than some of these polling organizations. And the movement across this is very minimal. Trump went up slightly in being in the unfavorable versus favorable. He's more unfavorable by 2 points. Favorable, he lost a point. And Biden is up 3 and down to up 3 on favorable, down 2 on unfavorable. So it didn't move the needle much in terms of gaining support. Trump gained a little bit more support in the absolutely certain. And in very likely, Biden lost 1 in very likely 1% and gained 1 in not too likely. And so it's like the needle didn't really move here, right? Like this is not one of those move the needle sort of moments.
And it could have moved, the needle could have moved a lot more in Trump's favor if he had done, like I said, a couple simple things. Now, and I'm just going to say right now, if the Democrats lose to Trump twice, it's all their fault. Like it is all their fault.
100%.
Like they picked another weak sister candidate to go up against Donald Trump. And I'll be honest with you, Bernie Sanders would have been just as weak. Like I mean, he would have been just as weak. I think he would have had more support because he's got more of a following, but just as weak of a candidate to go up. I mean, the only person that I could see going up against Trump and just wiping the floor with him when it comes to having an actual like presidential type debate would have been Tulsi Gabbard. But
I think Tulsi would have done well against him. I think Kamala would too because she's good at debating. I'm not sure about the policy aspect of Kamala beyond the borders, but I do think Tulsi would have gave him fits because it takes a lot. I think she's very measured, right? Like I haven't seen her just kind of lose it, sort of thing. But yeah, man, I remember, what was it? Something happened in, I think, June or something like that. And Chris made a joke, Chris Garza, not Chris Wallace, made a joke that, oh, the election's over, he's done. And I was like, nah, man, they got plenty of time to mess this up. And so
oh yeah,
they got plenty of time still. We're like 30 days, 30.
It's gonna be funny though, because you and I both know that this whole, because they talked about how the election results could be delayed because of how the votes get counted. Trump, what did he say? Trump said that they said something like days or weeks, and then Trump goes months. And I was just like, months. I was like, I mean, basically insinuated that we may not even know what the election results are like by the end of this year. You know what I mean? But it was just funny to hear him chime in and say months after they said like weeks or days or weeks or whatever.
And I
think they're projecting that this thing is not going to be. We're not going to know who won for however long after the election. Like there's gonna be some post-election shenanigans.
Right. I think Biden's answer on that was actually really good too, because it's about dispelling narratives, and I think he basically dispelled the idea that he's not going to support, like he's not going to basically buck the system in that sense and just be like, I'm not accepting the results, sort of thing. But he always leaves a little bit of an out that if the things are voted and the votes come in, sort of thing. But he basically went middle of the road and said, if I win, I win. If I lose, I lose. He can't stay forever. He will be gone, blah, 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 sort of thing. Like his statement on that, I thought he had a good closing on that part. But the funny thing is that Trump keep delaying this too long, his buddy Pelosi is going to be the one that's in power. So,
right. Yeah.
Lost that one. But
definitely don't. I don't want that. I know that.
Oh yeah. I think that would be weird.
People on the right would lose their freaking minds.
Oh my God. Yeah, definitely. But it was chock full, man, of conspiracy theories, and both of them, completely missing the mark on so many different points. And I understand debates you always leave a debate and you're like, dang, I should have said that. And I get that, but, I think they both missed. And, to echo your statement and everything I've heard, America lost. So,
yeah. If anybody lost, it was America last night for sure. Well, when's the next debate?
Next debate is Kamala next week. Kamala and Pence.
And Pence?
Next week on the 7th. So October 7th is Kamala and Pence, and then on the 15th and the 22nd is the next presidential. So basically, we got one a week from here on out.
I can almost guarantee you Pence is gonna come out of that the victor. So I don't see Kamala. I don't think it's gonna be a landslide. But I don't see Pence. I don't see Pence walking away, losing that debate perceived.
Yeah, so I'm not. So the problem is, and I'll keep this brief, but Kamala is really good at confrontational type debates, and Pence is not that. And I think that's the problem, is that Kamala won't be able to debate in a confrontational sense. So I don't know how well she'll do outside of that sort of scenario, but she's very quick-witted, unless something like Tulsi pops up. It took her a little bit to recover in that debate from Tulsi and actually get a good response in. But Pence isn't going to hit her real hard, right? And she's going to have to try to corner him, but he's very measured, and I don't think it's going to be easy to corner him. So I don't have a real clear understanding of, or a real clear definition, of how Pence wins, how she wins. But I wouldn't be surprised if Pence comes out on that one.
Well, what you might see is a lot of the meat and potatoes that you would have hoped to see with Trump versus Biden. You might see that play out with Pence versus Kamala on the Pence side.
I figured that.
Because Pence is going to be able to have the kind of policy discussions and, he's going to be able to levy those kinds of attacks in a very, measured, coherent way against Kamala instead of, versus Trump doing it against Biden. So I think you'll see more of that from Pence, which is good because good for Trump anyway.
Yeah. I mean, Pence is really good at that part of it, and I think he will be good at expressing what they've done during COVID, which I think Trump didn't do a good job of stating what he's done to get rid of the narrative aspect. But I think Pence will do a good job of that. And Kamala, she's gonna have to be ready. Like, she is absolutely gonna have to be ready to speak policy. And then I don't even 2 weeks after that, man, that is up no understanding of what's about to happen there. Like, that's going to be interesting to see how they actually handle that. So
pop some popcorn. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, man. So we're actually going to be switching up just from a business perspective here. We're going to be switching up our show and moving to a Tuesday and a Sunday show. So, like we always say, man, life gets in the way, or not really gets in the way. It just, life is what it is. And so we all have lives that we have to do certain things. And Wednesday nights is a little bit difficult for us in some ways. So we're going to go ahead and switch that up to Tuesdays at 7 p.m., Sundays at 2 p.m. You can catch us at politicalfreeagents.com. You can click on the live link and you can go check us out live on YouTube. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. You'll be notified every time we go live, and join us in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. You can also catch us anywhere podcasts exist. We're actually now on Amazon Music, and you can catch us on Deezer and iTunes and Google Play, or Google, I guess, YouTube Music now, wherever they're doing their podcast. We're everywhere podcasts are. So find us there. And just hang in there, American people. Like, I wish I could give you something just like, but hang in there. We'll survive whoever wins this. But we'll catch you on Sunday. We're out.